In the previous 3 chapters, Ivan has visited Smerdyakov 3 times. In the third time, it was made explicit that Smerdyakov could not have killed Ivan's father without the philosophical rationale, without the philosophical justification that Ivan's philosophy afforded him. And so in some way, Ivan is somehow implicated in the murder of his father. And while that's good news for Dmitri, it's bad news for Ivan's own psyche. We'll remember that much earlier in the novel, Zosima has said that we all bear a responsibility for each and every sin and atrocity committed, and Ivan's philosophy is basically the polar opposite of that we're only responsible for ourselves, and if there's no God, then what is even responsibility to ourselves? What does that even mean? If there's no God and more immortality, then everything is permitted. So now, fresh off this conversation with Smerdyakov, Ivan returns home. And he has a crisis, a nightmare, a psychotic break, a schizophrenic fit. As Dostoevsky shows that to not believe is a oxymoronic. It's paradoxical. It's ironic. In that, Ivan has this terrible moral burden for what he's allowed Smerdyakov to do, and yet with his rational mind, he has no philosophical justification for feeling that guilt. And so the entire chapter is paradoxical, ironic, oxymoronic, self-defeating. It's almost like if a person says, I don't speak a word of English, well, you're speaking English by telling us that you don't speak a word of English. And so Ivan does not think that the devil is real, but rather is a manifestation of himself or a base part of himself. And yet, who does he tell that to? He tells that to a devil. And so the irony begins as the narrator tells us, well, I'm not a doctor, but Ivan was suffering from schizophrenia, and yet Ivan is aware of his hallucinations. So very ironic situation when someone is hallucinating, yet they're aware that they're hallucinating, so they go forward. And so it's trying to navigate this impossible tension where the two sides of your whole being, your reason and your moral sense, do not align. And so Ivan is living in a hallucinogenic state because he feels the guilt but doesn't have a theological, philosophical rationale for the guilt that he feels. Another heaping of irony is poured on top when the character most described in the story is the devil. So the thing that's a hallucination, the thing that's just a figment of Ivan's imagination, speck of mustard, as Ebenezer Scrooge might say, is the most heavily described person of about 50, who is a social sponge, who was in fashion, if in fashion was 2 to 3 years ago. He's just a little bit out of style, and so he's the most physically described person, and he's the least embodied person. So I think Dostoevsky is winking at us there too. That's a little bit oxymoronic. That's a little paradoxical. And then the devil brings up a lot of things that the Grand Inquisitor brought up. The relationship between proofs and belief, and that he tells, remember, it's the devil talking. Remember, it's Ivan's base self talking. And he tells Ivan that people don't believe because of evidence. People believe because they want to believe, or they don't want to believe. So Thomas wanted to believe in Jesus. The evidence was just happenstance. He says, I know that you threatened to kick me, but if you kick me, that means I win, because nobody would kick a spirit, only people kick a real thing. And so, like the Grand Inquisitor, the devil is really not that bad of a guy. Yes, the devil is going to lead the world to damnation, but what a cozy, comfortable path to damnation, relieving us of the burden of choosing, the burden of faith along the way. No, Ivan, he's going to use a new method, one translation says, or a special method, another translation says. And so I think what the devil is referring to there with Ivan is the old method, the non-special method, was this polar opposite choice between atheism or theism. But with Ivan, he's going to do something, well, much more devilish, much more serpentine-like, and that is he's just going to argue the other side of whatever Ivan is feeling. So he gives Ivan more reason to be an atheist, and he gives Ivan more reason to be a theist, and he said that that's the exact path or he implies that that's the exact path that the Grand Inquisitor took earlier to unbelief. And so this new method is the devil is just going to play the devil's advocate, and whatever Ivan is want to believe, he's going to take the opposite position. And the narrator tells us that, or rather the devil tells us that in that conundrum of the problems of doubt and the problems of faith all mixed together, that people would sooner be hanged than that. And then he tells this long, involved parable of a philosopher who was sentenced to hell, who didn't believe in the afterlife, who walked off his hell sentence for 1 billion years, and then came, and then 2 seconds of praise of God was worth all of the pain. But of course, the godly didn't accept him because he was a turncoat. And maybe Dostoevsky is being a little bit autobiographical there, as his conversion to Christianity 2 seconds after converting, the skeptics turned on him as well. And then he brings up two of the devil. He brings up two of Ivan's great articles, the Grand Inquisitor and the Geological Cataclysm. Geological Cataclysm just seems a lot like John Lennon's Imagine. It's we don't need Christian morality. We're all beyond that. What if we imagine there's no heaven, no hell below us, above us only sky? Well, what if we just imagine that? Well, fresh off the heels of the conversation with Smerdyakov, Ivan knows where that leads. You can have a philosophical, theological rationale for it, but when it comes to a real life existential situation of your own father being murdered, it doesn't hold up. And so the devil speaks truth to Ivan and says, if that's the case, if you want to swindle. If you want your father dead, have your father dead. But don't come making excuses. Again, if there's no immortality and there's no God, you don't need all these philosophical justifications. Begone with the conscience, because rationally there's no reason to have the conscience. And so finally, Ivan throws, a la Martin Luther at the devil, Ivan throws his cup at the devil, showing that you don't throw cups at apparitions, you throw cups at real things. And so Ivan's schizophrenic break is real. He has given in to the existence of the devil only to have his half-wakened sleep. You see that at the end of the chapter happens not when he's awake nor when he's asleep. So that knocking is half sleep, half awake, only to find that there's been another death that maybe he's going to be involved in as well. Smerdyakov has hanged himself, and so now his father and his half-brother have been allowed to perish because of Ivan's non-immortal, non-theistic worldview, and it's split. It's splintering. It's schizophrenic. Good news for Dmitri, ? But bad news for Ivan in his future and living out the worldview that he espouses.